Maya Chun was 3 months behind on rent when she answered a stranger's abandoned phone and heard a voice so polished, it took her seconds to realize it was artificial intelligence designed to steal billions. The words that came out of her mouth next would either get her fired from the only job keeping her afloat, or catapult her into a world of corporate espionage where one wrong move could cost lives. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Sometimes the most extraordinary moments arrive disguised as ordinary accidents. For Maya Chun, a 26-year-old waitress barely keeping her head above water, that moment came on a rain-soaked Wednesday evening when she picked up a phone that wasn't hers. For Alexander Hartwell, the billionaire CEO whose empire stretched across 3 continents, it was the moment a stranger's instinct saved him from losing everything. This isn't a story about luck or coincidence. This is the story of how a single act of honesty in a world built on deception would expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest corridors of power and forced 2 people from completely different worlds to trust each other with their lives. The rain hammered against the windows of the Sterling room with the kind of relentless fury that made even the idea of leaving feel impossible. Maya wiped down the bar for what felt like the 100th time that evening, her fingers pruned and aching from hours of washing glasses and clearing tables. The restaurant, an upscale establishment on the 40th floor of the Hartwell Tower, was emptying out as the storm intensified. Most of the late dinner crowd had already fled, leaving behind half-finished bottles of wine and generous tips that Maya desperately needed. She was 3 months behind on rent, her student loan payments were crushing her, and her younger brother's college tuition was due in 2 weeks. Every dollar mattered. Every shift counted. The restaurant manager, Gerald, a perpetually irritated man with a receding hairline and an inflated sense of importance, barked orders from the kitchen entrance. Maya, table 12 needs clearing, and for God's sake, smile more. You look like you're at a funeral. Maya forced her professional mask back into place, grabbed a tray, and headed to table 12. It was one of the private booths near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city below. The rain streaked down the glass like tears, and the lights of the buildings below blurred into abstract paintings of gold and white. The booth had been occupied by a single diner, a man who had eaten quickly and left without much conversation. As she cleared the plates, she noticed something on the leather seat, partially hidden by a folded napkin. A phone. Not just any phone, but the kind of sleek, expensive device that cost more than Maya made in 3 months. It was encased in black leather with subtle gold trim, the screen dark but emanating the quiet authority of something important. Maya picked it up, her heart sinking. She knew she should turn it into Gerald, who would lock it in the safe and pretend to care about returning it, while probably hoping the owner never came back so he could pocket it himself. But something stopped her. The phone felt heavy with significance, and Maya had learned long ago to trust her instincts. They were the only thing that had kept her alive and functioning in a world that seemed designed to grind people like her into dust. She slipped the phone into her apron pocket and continued clearing the table, her mind racing. She would wait until her shift ended and then figure out how to return it properly. Maybe the owner had already realized it was missing and would call. Maybe there was an emergency contact. She finished clearing the table, deposited the dishes in the kitchen, and was heading back to the bar when the phone in her pocket began to vibrate. The sensation was startling, insistent. She glanced around. Gerald was occupied with a demanding customer at table 7, and the other servers were busy closing out their sections. Maya ducked into the small server station, a cramped alcove hidden from the dining room, and pulled out the phone. The screen lit up with an incoming call. No name, just a number with an international prefix she didn't recognize. Her thumb hovered over the decline button, but then she noticed something odd. The phone's lock screen displayed a security alert. A small red triangle with an exclamation point next to the caller ID. Maya's brother Tyler was a computer science major with an obsession for cybersecurity. He had shown her enough about phishing scams and social engineering attacks that she recognized the warning sign. This wasn't a normal call. This was flagged as potentially dangerous. Without thinking, driven by the same instinct that made her question everything, Maya answered the call. "Hello, this is Alexander Hartwell's phone." She tried to sound professional, authoritative, like she had every right to be answering. There was a brief pause on the other end, then a smooth, cultured voice responded, "Ah, excellent." I was beginning to worry the line had been disconnected. "This is Richard Blackwood from Hartwell Industries Legal Division in London. I need to speak with MR. Hartwell immediately regarding the merger documents. It's quite urgent." Maya's heart began to race. Something about the voice felt wrong. It was too smooth, too practiced, like an actor reading lines. And why would someone from the legal division call from an unlisted international number that triggered a security warning? "Mr. Hartwell isn't available right now," Maya said, carefully stalling for time. "Can I take a message?" The voice on the other end became slightly more insistent, a hairline crack appearing in its professional veneer. "I'm afraid this cannot wait. The Singapore merger is time-sensitive, and we need MR Hartwell's electronic signature on several documents within the hour. I'm sending a secure link to this phone momentarily. All he needs to do is click the link and verify his credentials. It's standard procedure." Every alarm bell in Maya's head was ringing. Tyler had warned her about this exact scenario, a scammer impersonating someone from a company, creating artificial artificial urgency, and then sending a malicious link designed to steal information or drain accounts. She had seen her brother's presentations about how these attacks targeted high-net-worth individuals, how sophisticated they had become, how they could devastate someone's entire financial life in minutes. Her hands were shaking, but her voice remained steady. "Sir, this call sounds like a scam." The words came out before she could stop them, blunt and certain. There was a long, dangerous silence on the other end. Then the cultured voice hardened into something cold and threatened. "I don't appreciate your tone. Who exactly are you? And why are you answering Mr. Hartwell's private line?" "I'm someone who knows you're not calling from any legal division," Maya shot back, her fear transforming into defiance. "And I know that no legitimate company would send a secure link over a phone call. You're trying to steal his credentials." The line went dead. Maya stared at the phone in her hand, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had just confronted what was clearly a sophisticated scammer targeting someone incredibly wealthy and powerful. But who was Alexander Hartwell? "Maya, what the hell are you doing?" Gerald's voice snapped her back to reality. He stood at the entrance to the server station, his face red with irritation. "You're supposed to be working, not playing on your phone." "This isn't mine," Maya said quickly, holding up the device. "Customer left. I was just trying to see if I could find an emergency contact." "Well, put it in the safe and get back to work. We have 3 tables that need attention." As Gerald stalked away, Maya looked down at the phone again. The screen had lit up with a notification. 3 more incoming calls from different international numbers, all flagged with security warning. Someone was trying very, very hard to reach Alexander Hartwell, and they weren't giving up. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to lock this phone in a safe where Gerald might conveniently forget about it or where another scammer might succeed where the first had failed. She was going to find Alexander Hartwell herself and tell him what was happening. She had no idea that the man she was about to track down was currently in a board meeting 60 floors above her head, finalizing a deal that would reshape the global tech industry. She had no idea that the call she had just intercepted was part of a coordinated attack designed to steal not just money, but control of his entire company. And she had absolutely no idea that by answering that phone, she had just made herself the most important and most endangered person in Alexander Hartwell's world. The storm outside intensified, lightning illuminating the city in brief, brilliant flashes. Maya stood in the small server station, gripping a stranger's phone, and felt the weight of something far larger than herself settling onto her shoulders. She didn't know it yet, but she had just stepped into a war that had been brewing in the shadows of the corporate world for years, and there was no going back. Finding Alexander Hartwell proved easier than Maya expected, though not in the way she anticipated. She emerged from the server station with the phone still in her hand, her mind racing through possibilities. The Sterling Room was located in Hartwell Tower, which meant the phone's owner had likely been dining in his own building. The realization sent a fresh wave of anxiety through her. She wasn't just dealing with any wealthy customer, she was dealing with the Alexander Hartwell, the man whose name was literally on the building, whose face appeared in business magazines, whose company had revolutionized cloud computing and artificial intelligence. Maya had served him dinner without even recognizing him. She approached the hostess stand where Simone, a graceful woman in her 50s who had worked at the Sterling Room since it opened, was reviewing the reservation book. Simone had a gift for remembering faces and an encyclopedic knowledge of the restaurant's regular clients. "Simone," Maya said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "The man who was at table 12 tonight, the one who left about 20 minutes ago, do you know who he was?" Simone looked up, her perfectly arched eyebrow rising slightly. "That was Moore. Hartwell himself, dear. He comes in perhaps once a month, always alone, always orders the same thing. Salmon, no sauce, steamed vegetables, sparkling water. Why do you ask?" "He left his phone," Maya said, holding up the device. "I need to return it to him." "It's important." Simone's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. She'd been in the service industry long enough to recognize when something was genuinely urgent versus simply inconvenient. "How important?" "Someone tried to scam him," Maya explained, lowering her voice. "I answered the phone when it rang, and the person on the other end was pretending to be from his legal department. They wanted him to click on a link. It was sophisticated, Simone. Really sophisticated. I think he's being targeted." The older woman's face went pale. She reached for the desk phone and dialed a number from memory. "Security, this is Simone at the Sterling Room. I need to reach MR Hartwell immediately." There was a pause. Then she spoke again, her tone brooking no argument. "I don't care if he's in a meeting. This is a code red situation regarding his personal security." After another moment, she hung up and looked at Maya. "They're sending someone down to escort you to the executive floor. You're about to get an audience with one of the most powerful men in the city. Try not to faint." The elevator ride to the 80th floor felt surreal. Maya stood between 2 stone-faced security officers, still wearing her black server's apron, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, clutching a phone that probably cost more than her car. The elevator was all glass and chrome, rising through the building's core with such smoothness that the only indication of movement was the rapidly changing floor numbers on the digital display. She could see the storm raging outside, the rain lashing against the windows, the city below transforming into a watercolor painting of light and shadow. One of the security officers, a compact woman with sharp eyes and an earpiece, glanced at Maya. "You said someone tried to scam Mr. Hartwell." "Yes," Maya replied. "They called pretending to be from his legal division in London. They wanted him to click a link to sign merger documents." The officer exchanged a look with her colleague, and Maya saw something flicker in her expression. Recognition, perhaps, or concern. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that looked like it belonged in an art museum. The floors were polished marble, the walls adorned with abstract paintings that probably cost more than Maya would earn in her lifetime. A sleek reception desk stood empty, the building's administrative staff having gone home hours ago. The security officers led Maya down a hushed corridor, their footsteps echoing softly. They stopped before a set of massive wooden doors, and the female officer knocked twice. A voice from within, deep and commanding, called out, "Come in!" The door swung open, and Maya found herself standing at the threshold of an enormous office that seemed to float in the sky. 3 walls were floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a 360-degree view of the storm-ravaged city. The 4th wall was lined with bookshelves and what appeared to be very expensive art. In the center of the room, behind a desk of dark wood and glass, sat Alexander Hartwell. He was younger than Maya expected, perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair that was slightly disheveled as if he had been running his hands through it. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, his tie loosened, and there was an intensity to his presence that made the enormous office feel smaller. His eyes, a striking shade of gray, locked onto Maya with the kind of focus that made her feel simultaneously seen and dissected. Behind him stood 3 other people, clearly interrupted from whatever meeting had been taking place. A silver-haired man in an immaculate suit, a younger woman with red hair and a tablet in her hand, and another man who looked like he could be Hartwell's brother, though his expression was far less friendly. "Mr. Hartwell," the security officer said, "this is Maya Chun from the Sterling Room. She has your phone and claims there was a security incident." Alexander Hartwell's eyes moved to the phone in Maya's hand, and something flickered across his face. Not relief, not quite, but recognition of something he hadn't realized was missing. He stood up, his full height impressive, and walked around the desk toward her. "When did you find this?" His voice was exactly as Maya had imagined it would be, controlled, intelligent, with an undertone of steel. "About 30 minutes ago," Maya said, willing her voice not to shake. "You left it at your table. I was clearing the plates when it started ringing." His eyes narrowed slightly. "And you answered it." It was a statement, not a question, and Maya couldn't tell if he was angry or merely curious. "The phone had a security alert," she explained. "A red triangle. My brother works in cybersecurity, and he's taught me about these things. When I answered, the person on the other end claimed to be Richard Blackwood from your London legal division. They said there were urgent merger documents that needed your signature. They were going to send you a secure link." The room went absolutely silent. The silver-haired man behind Hartwell made a small, sharp sound, and the red-haired woman's fingers flew across her tablet. Hartwell's expression transformed from skeptical interest to something much darker and more dangerous. "What exactly did this person say?" "Everything," Maya recounted, her memory crystalline from adrenaline. "They mentioned a Singapore merger. They said it was time-sensitive. They used specific corporate language, but the call came from an unlisted international number with a security flag. When I told them it sounded like a scam, they got hostile and asked who I was, then they hung up. But the phone has been ringing continuously since then. Different numbers, all flagged." The silver-haired man moved forward, his face ashen. "Alexander, the Singapore merger is classified. Only 7 people in the world know the details. If someone outside that circle is using it as bait, then we have a serious breach." Hartwell held out his hand, and Maya placed the phone in his palm. Their fingers touched briefly, and Maya felt an electric shock of connection, something that had nothing to do with the situation and everything to do with the man himself. He unlocked the phone with his thumbprint and began scrolling through the missed calls, his jaw tightening with each swipe. "James," he said to the silver-haired man, "initiate Protocol 7. Lock down all systems. No electronic signatures, no wire transfers, nothing moves until we identify the source of this attack." "Victoria," he turned to the red-haired woman, "get our cybersecurity team on this immediately. I want to know how they knew about Singapore." The woman nodded and was already on her phone before she reached the door. Hartwell then turned back to Maya, and for the first time, his expression softened fractionally. "You potentially just saved my company from a catastrophic security breach. That link would have installed ransomware designed to lock us out of our own systems and extract hundreds of millions in cryptocurrency. We've been tracking a group attempting exactly this kind of attack for months." Maya felt the room tilt slightly. She had known it was serious, but hearing the numbers, understanding the scope, made her realize she had stumbled into something far beyond her comprehension. "I just did what felt right," she said, her voice smaller than she intended. "Most people wouldn't have," Hartwell countered. "Most people would have ignored the warning, or not known what it meant, or been too intimidated to question. You trusted your instinct, and you acted on it. That's rare." He studied her for a long moment, and Maya felt the weight of that gaze, felt him taking her measure in the same way she imagined he evaluated business deals and corporate acquisitions. The third man, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was colder than Hartwell's, edged with suspicion. "This is all very convenient, Alexander. A waitress just happens to answer your phone, just happens to have a brother in cybersecurity, just happens to recognize a sophisticated attack. How do we know she's not part of it?" The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Hartwell's eyes never left Maya's face. Because Marcus, if she were part of it, she would have let me click the link. She would have handed me the phone and said there was an urgent call. She wouldn't have intercepted it, recognized it, and brought it directly to me while leaving a trail of witnesses. He paused, then added, and because I'm a very good judge of character. Marcus didn't look convinced, but he fell silent. Hartwell pulled a business card from his pocket and handed it to Maya. This has my private number on it, not the one that's published. The one that goes directly to my phone. I'm going to need you to give a full statement to my security team about exactly what was said on that call. Every word you can remember. Maya took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. Of course, whatever you need. But she hesitated, then added, Sir, I need to get back to my shift. My manager's going to fire me if I'm gone any longer. The ghost of a smile touched Hartwell's lips. No, he won't. I own the building. I own the restaurant. And as of this moment, you don't work there anymore. Maya's heart stopped. What? She'd been fired before, but never like this. Never for doing something right. Hartwell must have seen the panic in her eyes because he held up a hand. You misunderstand. I'm not firing you. I'm hiring you. My head of security just resigned last week, and I've been looking for someone with the right instincts, someone who can see through deception, someone who isn't so polished by corporate culture that they've lost the ability to recognize danger. You proved tonight that you have all of those qualities. The offer landed like a bomb. Maya stared at him, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate joke or if she had somehow fallen through a portal into an alternate universe. I'm a waitress, she said, the words coming out flat with disbelief. I have a degree in hospitality management and $70,000 in student debt. I don't know anything about corporate security. You know more than you think, Hartwell countered, and what you don't know, you'll learn. The salary is $400,000 a year, full benefits, and a signing bonus that will cover your debt. You start Monday. Maya's world was spinning. $400,000. It was more money than she had ever imagined earning. It was enough to save her brother's education, to get her own place, to finally stop drowning. But it was also terrifying. She looked at this man, this billionaire who was offering her a life she hadn't dared to dream of, and saw something in his eyes that made her believe he was serious. Why me? She asked, needing to understand. Because you answered the phone, Hartwell said simply. Because when everyone else would have ignored it or handed it off, you engaged. You fought. And because I've learned that sometimes the best people for a job are the ones who haven't been taught all the ways they're supposed to fail. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal, Miss Chun? Maya looked at his hand, looked at the card in her own hand. Looked at the storm raging outside the windows. She thought about her tiny apartment, her exhausting shifts, her brother's worried calls about money. She thought about the phone call, about the instinct that had made her answer, about the strange sense that she was standing at a crossroads. Then she reached out and shook Alexander Hartwell's hand. Deal, she said, and felt her entire life change in that single word. The next 72 hours passed in a blur that left Maya questioning whether she had somehow stepped into someone else's life. Friday morning, she woke up in her cramped studio apartment with its leaking faucet and flickering lights, wondering if the previous night had been some kind of fever dream. But the business card on her nightstand was real, the text message confirming her Monday start date was real, and the direct deposit notification showing a signing bonus of $75,000 hitting her account at exactly 8 a.m. was devastatingly, impossibly real. Maya sat on her secondhand couch and cried, not delicate tears, but the kind of sobbing that came from years of holding everything together, of rationing meals so her brother could eat, of choosing which bill to pay late each month. The money wasn't just numbers in an account, it was freedom, it was survival. It was proof that maybe, just maybe, the universe didn't hate her after all. By Friday afternoon, she received a call from a woman named Victoria Reeves, the red-haired executive from the meeting. Victoria's voice was crisp and efficient, with an undertone of warmth that suggested she was more than just Hartwell's corporate automaton. Miss Chun, I'm Mr. Hartwell's chief operating officer. I'll be coordinating your onboarding. We're going to need you to come in tomorrow for security clearances, NDA signing, and preliminary briefing. This isn't a typical position, and we're on an accelerated timeline given the current threat level. Maya's stomach tightened. Current threat level. The words made everything feel suddenly real and dangerous in a way that her exhausted acceptance the night before hadn't fully processed. What exactly is the threat? She asked. Victoria's pause was deliberate. That's something Hartwell will brief you on personally. But I can tell you that what you intercepted Wednesday night wasn't an isolated incident. It was the latest in a series of increasingly sophisticated attacks on Hartwell Industries. Someone wants access to our systems very badly, and they're willing to go to extraordinary lengths to get it. Saturday morning, Maya found herself back in Hartwell Tower, this time entering through a private underground garage where Victoria met her personally. The coup was dressed casually in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, but she moved with the same purposeful efficiency Maya had observed during the meeting. She led Maya through a series of security checkpoints, each requiring biometric scans and badge access, descending deeper into the building's infrastructure. We're going to the operations center, Victoria explained as they walked down a corridor lit by subtle blue lighting. It's not on any building schematic. Only 12 people have access, and as of today, you're the 13th. They stopped before a seamless metal door with no visible handle or keypad. Victoria placed her hand on what appeared to be a blank panel, and a green light scanned her palm. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a space that looked like it belonged in a science fiction film. The operations center was a circular room dominated by a massive curved display showing real-time data streams, security feeds, and what appeared to be network traffic analyses. Workstations ringed the perimeter, each with multiple monitors, and the lighting was low and blue-tinted to reduce eye strain. In the center of the room, standing before the main display, was Alexander Hartwell. He had changed from his corporate uniform into dark jeans and a black t-shirt, and somehow the casual attire made him more intimidating rather than less. He looked like what he was, a man who had built an empire from code and determination and wasn't about to let anyone take it from him. He turned as they entered, and his gray eyes found Maya immediately. "Miss Chun, welcome to the nerve center of Hartwell Industries. What you see in this room is classified at the highest level. You've already signed the preliminary NDAs, but I need you to understand that what I'm about to show you could put you in danger. If you want to walk away, now is the moment. No judgment, no consequences." Maya felt her heart hammering, but she stepped forward into the room. "I'm not walking away," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Hartwell nodded, something that might have been approval flickering in his expression. "Then let me show you what we're dealing with." He gestured to the main display, and Victoria tapped a command on a nearby tablet, the screen filled with a complex web of connections, nodes, and data points. "This," Hartwell began, "is a visualization of the attacks on Hartwell Industries over the past 6 months. What started as standard corporate espionage, phishing attempts, and ransomware has evolved into something far more organized and dangerous." The display zoomed in, highlighting specific incidents. "In March, someone attempted to bribe 3 of our engineers to install backdoors in our security system. All 3 reported it, and we tracked the money to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands. In April, we discovered an employee who had been planted in our accounting department 2 years ago, quietly gathering financial data. In May, there was a physical break-in attempt at our data center in Virginia, sophisticated enough that they almost succeeded." Maya studied the display, trying to process the scale of what she was seeing. "And Wednesday's phone call? That was the most brazen attempt yet," Hartwell said, his voice hardening. "Whoever is behind this knew about the Singapore merger, which means they have access to information that should be impossible to obtain. The merger details were discussed in a meeting with only 6 other people, all of whom have been with me for over a decade." Victoria stepped forward, her tablet displaying a series of call records. "After your intervention, we traced the phone numbers used in the attempted scam. They were routed through multiple countries using VoIP services, but our cybersecurity team found something interesting." The voice on the call, the one claiming to be Richard Blackwood, was AI-generated. It was synthesized to match the real Richard Blackwood's voice patterns, cadence, and speech patterns. Someone had access to recordings of him speaking. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "So this isn't just one person. This is an organization." "Exactly," Hartwell confirmed. "Which brings me to why I need you. Every security expert I've hired has been trained in conventional corporate security. They think in terms of firewalls, encryption, and access protocols. But this enemy isn't conventional. They're adaptive, creative, and they understand human psychology better than any algorithm. What you did Wednesday night, recognizing the scam through instinct rather than training, that's the kind of thinking I need." He pulled up another screen, this one showing a photograph of a man in his 50s with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes. "This is Marcus Vance, the man who was in my office Wednesday night. He's been my head of operations for 8 years. 2 days ago, he resigned without explanation and disappeared. We haven't been able to locate him." Maya remembered the suspicious, hostile man who had accused her of being part of the plot. "He thought I was involved," she said slowly. "Was he projecting? Was he the one feeding information to whoever's behind?" "That's one theory," Victoria said, her voice tight. "But it doesn't fully add up. Marcus had access to everything. If he wanted to destroy the company, he could have done it already. His departure feels more like fear than guilt. Someone or something spooked him badly enough that he ran." Hartwell crossed his arms, and Maya noticed for the first time how exhausted he looked beneath the controlled exterior. "I've spent the last 2 days running scenarios, and here's what I believe. Someone is attempting a hostile takeover of Hartwell Industries, not through the stock market or the boardroom, but through systematic infiltration and sabotage. They want to cripple us from the inside, make us vulnerable, and then strike when we're weakest. The Singapore merger is worth $30 billion. If it falls through, our stock price will plummet, and we become a prime target for acquisition." Maya's mind raced, connecting dots. "So if they can sabotage the merger and tank your stock price, they can buy the company for a fraction of its worth. It's not about stealing data. It's about stealing everything." "Now you're thinking like a security chief," Hartwell said. And this time, there was definitely a proof voice. "The question is who has the resources, the motivation, and the sophistication to orchestrate this kind of campaign. We've identified 3 potential suspects." The display shifted again, showing 3 separate profiles. "First, Nexus Corporation, our biggest competitor in the AI space. They've been trying to catch up to our technology for years, and acquiring us would make them the dominant player globally. Second, a group of former Hartwell executives who left the company 5 years ago after a disagreement about our direction. They have the inside knowledge and the grudge. Third, And this is the theory that concerns me most, a foreign intelligence operation. Several governments would love to have access to our quantum encryption technology and our defense contracts. Any of them could be using this chaos as cover for espionage. Maya studied each profile, feeling the weight of responsibility settling onto her shoulder. This wasn't just about protecting a company. This was about protecting technology that could have global implications, about defending against threats that operated in shadows and used people as pawns. How do you want me to start? She asked, looking at Hartwell directly. Hartwell met her gaze, and for a moment the professional distance between them dissolved, replaced by something more human, more vulnerable. I want you to do what you did Wednesday night. I want you to trust your instincts. You're not contaminated by years of corporate security protocols. You see things the way a normal person would see them, and that's exactly what I need. Look at everything with fresh eyes, question everything. Trust no one, not even me, until you're certain they're clean. Victoria handed Maya a badge on a lanyard, sleek black with a silver stripe. This gives you level 7 access. You can go anywhere in the building, access any system, question any employee. You report directly to Mr. Hartwell and to no one else. As Maya clipped the badge to her shirt, she felt the magnitude of what she had agreed to. 3 days ago, she had been worried about making rent. Now she was responsible for protecting a $30 billion company from an enemy she couldn't see. The fear was there, sharp and real, but beneath it was something else. Purpose. For the first time in her life, Maya Chun wasn't just surviving, she was fighting, and she was going to win. Hartwell's phone buzzed, and he glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. We have another problem. 2 of our engineers just tried to leave the country. TSA flagged them at the airport with encrypted hard drives. He looked at Maya, and she saw the test in his eyes. The challenge. What's your instinct tell you? Maya thought about the pattern, about the escalating attacks, about the timing. This feels like a distraction, she said slowly. Like someone wants you looking at the engineers while the real move happens somewhere else. Hartwell's lips curved into the first genuine smile she had seen from him. Welcome to Hartwell Industries, Miss Chun. Let's get to work. The drive to the airport was tense and silent. Maya sat in the back of Hartwell's armored SUV, watching the city blur past through tinted windows while her mind raced through possibilities. Hartwell sat beside her, his attention focused on a tablet displaying real-time updates from his security team. Victoria was in the front passenger seat, coordinating with federal agents who had detained the 2 engineers. The driver, a former Secret Service agent named Thomas, navigated traffic with the kind of aggressive precision that suggested he had done this many times before. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her brother Tyler. The message was simple but carried weight she hadn't anticipated. Mom called. She heard you quit the restaurant. Is everything okay? Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard. How could she possibly explain that she had stumbled into a corporate espionage thriller, that she was now sitting next to a billionaire racing to interrogate potential traitors? She typed back a carefully neutral response. Everything's fine. Got a new job, better pay. We'll call you tonight, promise. The airport's private security wing was a part of the complex most travelers never saw. A utilitarian space of concrete walls and fluorescent lights where people who had violated federal aviation laws waited for their fate. Hartwell's team had arranged for a secure room where they could question the engineers before the FBI officially took custody. As they walked through the sterile corridors, Maya noticed how Hartwell's entire demeanor shifted. The exhaustion she had glimpsed earlier was gone, replaced by a focused intensity that reminded her of a predator closing in on prey. 2 federal agents stood outside the interrogation room, both wearing the kind of neutral expressions that came from years of dealing with corporate criminals and international smugglers. One of them, a woman with sharp features and graying hair, nodded to Hartwell. Miss Hartwell, they're inside. Both are claiming they were taking work home for the weekend. The encrypted drives contain what they say are personal coding projects. We're waiting for a warrant to decrypt them. Hartwell's jaw tightened. Those drives contain proprietary Hartwell Industries code. I can guarantee it. The question is whether they were stealing it for profit or whether they were coerced. Maya stepped forward, drawing surprised looks from the agents. Before we go in, can I see their personal effect? The agent's eyebrows rose, but she gestured to a clear plastic bin on a nearby table. Maya examined the contents carefully. 2 wallets, 2 phones, car keys, loose change, a pack of gum, boarding passes for a flight to Vancouver, and something that made Maya's instincts flare. 2 identical business cards, pristine and unused, tucked into each wallet. She picked one up and held it to the light. The card was expensive, printed on heavy stock with raised lettering. It advertised a consulting firm called Meridian Solutions with an address in Seattle. But when Maya tilted the card, she noticed something odd about the printing. The ink had a slight shimmer to it, and the edges were too perfect, too clean. This was recently printed, she said, looking at Hartwell, like within the last week. And both of them have the exact same card in the exact same condition. That's not coincidence. Hartwell took the card from her, examining it closely. Meridian Solutions. Victoria, run that name through our databases. Every mention, every connection, every financial transaction. They entered the interrogation room to find 2 young men in their late 20s sitting at a metal table, both looking terrified and defiant in equal measure. One was tall and thin with wire-rimmed glasses. the other shorter with a nervous energy that manifested in constant fidgeting. Maya recognized the type immediately. These weren't hardened criminals. They were brilliant kids who had made a catastrophic mistake and were only now realizing the magnitude of their error. The tall one, whose identification listed him as Dr. Kevin Jong, spoke first. "Mr. Hartwell, this is a misunderstanding. We were taking our personal projects home. We have every right to work on our own code outside office hours." Hartwell sat down across from them, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Jong, you've worked for me for 3 years. You've signed multiple NDAs. You know that any code developed using company resources or company time belongs to Hartwell Industries. So let's skip the part where you lie to me and move directly to the part where you tell me who offered you money to steal my intellectual property." The shorter engineer, Michael Reeves, went pale. "We didn't steal anything. We were just going to Vancouver for a tech conference. The encrypted drives are standard security practice when traveling internationally." Maya pulled out one of the Meridian Solutions cards and placed it on the table between them. "Tell me about this company." Both engineers exchanged a glance, and Maya saw the moment they realized they had been caught. It was in the way Jung's shoulders slumped, in the way Reeves's fidgeting stopped entirely. They had been carrying evidence of their contact with whoever had recruited them, too naive or too arrogant to realize it would damn them. Reeves broke first. "A man contacted us 6 weeks ago. He said he was from a consulting firm that helps engineers monetize their personal projects. He said if we were working on anything innovative outside of work hours, they could help us secure independent patents and funding." It seemed legitimate. "How did he contact you?" Maya asked, her tone carefully neutral, non-accusatory. She needed them to keep talking, to feel like confession might save them. "Through LinkedIn," Zhang admitted. "He had endorsements from people in the industry. His profile looked real. He took us to dinner at an expensive restaurant downtown, told us about other engineers who had made millions by properly protecting their side projects. He never asked us to steal anything from Hartwell. He just said we should make sure we had backups of our personal work before presenting it to any investors." Hartwell's expression was granite. "And these personal projects, they just happen to include code identical to what you've been developing for the quantum encryption module." Zhang's defiance crumbled entirely. "We didn't mean for it to become like this. We kept the work separate, but the problems we were solving at home were similar to the problems we were solving at work. The algorithms started to overlap. When the Meridian guy offered us $2 million each for a presentation of our work, we thought we had created something independently valuable. We were going to Vancouver to meet with potential investors he had lined up." Victoria, who had been silent until now, spoke from the doorway. "I have preliminary results on Meridian Solutions. The company was incorporated in Delaware 3 months ago. The listed officers are all shell identities. The Seattle address is a virtual office. The website was created using a template and has no actual client testimonials or case studies. It's a front." Maya watched the engineers process this information, watched the reality of their situation settle over them like a shroud. They hadn't been courted by a legitimate consulting firm. They had been targets of a sophisticated social engineering attack designed to make them willing participants in corporate espionage. "You've been played," Maya said, her voice gentle but firm. "Someone researched you, found your ambitions and your financial pressures, and created an elaborate fiction to make you steal valuable code while thinking you were protecting your own work. And the question is whether you realize that now and cooperate, or whether you let whoever did this to you get away with it while you take the fall." Reeves looked like he might be sick. "We have families. Zhang has a daughter. I'm getting married in 3 months. That man, he knew everything about us. He knew Zhang's daughter had medical bills. He knew I was saving for a wedding. He made it seem like the money was the answer to everything." Hartwell leaned forward, and for the first time his expression showed something other than cold calculation. It showed a glimpse of understanding, maybe even sympathy. "I'm not interested in destroying your lives. I'm interested in finding out who is trying to destroy my company. If you cooperate fully, tell us everything about your contact with this person, help us trace him, I'll make sure the charges are reduced. You'll lose your jobs, but you won't lose your freedom. But I need everything. Names, dates, phone numbers, meeting locations, every detail, no matter how small." Zhang nodded immediately, relief flooding his features. "We kept everything. Emails, text messages, even photos from the dinners. We thought we were documenting a legitimate business relationship. We'll give you all of it." Over the next 2 hours, Maya sat with Victoria and Hartwell as the engineers provided a detailed accounting of their recruitment. The man who had approached them used the name David Morrison. He was approximately 50 years old, well-dressed, spoke with a slight British accent, and had an encyclopedic knowledge of the tech industry. He had taken them to 3 different restaurants, all high-end establishments where business deals were commonly discussed. He had paid in cash each time, leaving generous tips that the waitstaff would remember. He had given them prepaid phones for secure communication, phones that Zhang and Reeves still had in their possession. As Maya listened to the description, something nagged at her. The pattern was too clean, too professional. This wasn't someone's first operation. David Morrison, if that was even remotely his real name, was a specialist in human intelligence gathering. He had created an entire false identity, complete with a backstory, a fake company and financial resources substantial enough to offer $4 million for stolen code. When the interview concluded and the engineers were led away by federal agents, Hartwell, Victoria, and Maya reconvened in the SUV. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Maya pulled out the Meridian Solutions business card again, studying it under the vehicle's interior light. There was something about the card that bothered her beyond the obvious forgery. The address, she said suddenly. The Seattle address. It's in the same building as one of Nexus Corporation's satellite offices. Victoria's fingers flew across her tablet. Checking now. She paused, her expression sharpening. You're right. Nexus leases the entire 15th floor. The Meridian Solutions virtual office is on the 12th floor. That could be coincidence, Hartwell said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe in coincidences any more than Maya did. Or it could be deliberate misdirection, Victoria countered. If Nexus is behind this, they wouldn't be stupid enough to use an address in their own building. Someone wants us to suspect Nexus. They're creating a false trail. Maya felt the pieces shifting in her mind, a puzzle that was becoming more complex rather than simpler with each new revelation. What if we're looking at this wrong? She said slowly. What if this isn't about one enemy? What if multiple players are making moves simultaneously and we're seeing the overlap? Hartwell turned to look at her, his full attention focused. Explain. The phone scam that I intercepted, Maya began, that was incredibly sophisticated. AI voice synthesis, detailed knowledge of the Singapore merger, perfect timing. That's the work of a well-funded organization, maybe even a state actor. But this recruitment of the engineers, this feels different. It's more traditional espionage, the kind of long-game social engineering that takes time and patience. The approaches are different enough that they might not be coming from the same source. So you think we're dealing with at least two separate threats, Victoria said, and they might not even know about each other. Which means we can't assume a coordinated strategy. We have to treat each vector as its own investigation, Maya nodded, and we have to consider that whoever is behind each attack might be willing to escalate if they realize they have competition. If this is a race to take down Hartwell Industries, the players might start taking bigger risks, making bolder moves. The thought hung in the air as they drove back toward the tower. Maya watched the city lights begin to flicker on as darkness fell, and she thought about how just days ago, her biggest concern had been whether she could afford both electricity and groceries in the same month. Now she was theorizing about multiple sophistication, enemies conducting parallel espionage operations against a tech empire. The absurdity of it would have been laughable if it wasn't so deadly serious. Hartwell's phone rang, and he answered immediately. His expression went from focused to frozen, a transformation so complete that Maya felt her stomach drop. When? He asked, his voice tight. How many? There was a pause as he listened, his knuckles white where he gripped the phone. Initiate full lockdown. No one in or out. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up and looked at Thomas. Building security just detected an unauthorized access attempt on the operations center. Someone tried to breach the biometric locks using a cloned palm print. Maya felt ice run through her veins. Someone had tried to break into the most secure room in the building, the room she had been inside just hours ago. The room where all of Hartwell's most sensitive security data was stored. When? She asked. 7 minutes ago, Hartwell said, his jaw set. While we were here at the airport questioning the engineers. While we were conveniently out of the building. The distraction you predicted wasn't the engineers, Maya realized. The engineers getting caught was the distraction. The real move was happening at the tower while we were away. Hartwell met her eyes, and she saw in them the same cold fury she felt rising in herself. Whoever was orchestrating this had just made their first major mistake. They had shown their hand too clearly, moved too aggressively. And now the hunter had become the hunted. The SUV tore through traffic with Thomas behind the wheel, his training evident in every calculated maneuver. Maya gripped the door handle as they wove between cars, sirens clearing a path. Hartwell was on his phone, issuing rapid-fire commands to his security team, his voice clipped and precise. Victoria had her tablet out, pulling up security footage from the building in real time. Maya's mind was racing. A cloned palm print meant someone had obtained detailed biometric data from an authorized person. That level of access required either physical proximity to scan someone's hand or access to the biometric database itself. Both scenarios suggested an inside threat, someone close enough to touch. Who has access to the operations center? Maya asked, leaning forward. 12 people, Victoria answered without looking up from her tablet. Mr. Hartwell, myself, the chief technology officer, the head of cybersecurity, 3 senior engineers, 2 legal advisors, the CFO, and as of today, you, plus Marcus Vance until he disappeared. Marcus, Maya said, the pieces clicking together. If he was the one who fled, he would have had time to clone someone's biometric data before he left. He could have given it to whoever is behind this. Victoria shook her head, her red hair catching the streetlights. The breach attempt used my palm print. I've been with Mr. Hartwell in meetings all day. Someone scanned my hand without me knowing, or they have access to the biometric files. Maya remembered something from her brother's security presentations. Biometric cloning isn't perfect. There are usually tells, micro differences in heat signature or pressure points. Did your system flag it as suspicious before rejecting it? Victoria pulled up additional data. Yes. The system logged it as a failed authentication attempt with a 92% probability of being a synthetic reproduction. The attempt triggered our silent alarm protocol. The intruder is still in the building. They don't know we know. Hartwell's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. They're trapped. Thomas. Back entrance. We're going in quiet. The tower loomed ahead, its illuminated windows a vertical city within the city. The ground floor would normally be bustling with evening activity, restaurants, and shops, but Hartwell's lockdown order had sealed every entrance. Security personnel in plain clothes had taken positions at key points, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Maya spotted them immediately, the subtle tension in their postures, the way their eyes constantly scanned, the telltale bulges of concealed weapons. Thomas pulled into the underground garage and they exited the vehicle in silence. Two security officers met them at the elevator, both former military based on their bearing. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, spoke quietly. The intruder made it to the 79th floor before the lockdown. They're cornered in the executive conference wing. We have all exits covered. Hartwell nodded. Do we have visual? Not yet, sir. The conference wing has a camera blind spot. Something we've been meaning to fix. They're exploiting. Of course they are, Hartwell muttered. Maya, what does your instinct say about this? Maya thought about the pattern of attacks, the escalating boldness, the timing. This feels desperate, she said slowly. The phone scam failed. The engineer recruitment got exposed. This breach is rushed, sloppy compared to the other attempts. Either they're panicking or this is a completely different player who doesn't have the same resources. Or it's intentional sloppiness, Victoria suggested. Make us think they're desperate and amateurish when really they're setting up something else. Hartwell considered both theories. We proceed as if it's a genuine threat, but stay alert for secondary moves. Maya, you're with me. Victoria, coordinate with building security. I want every camera feed monitored, every exit watched. If there's a second team, I want them identified. They took a secure elevator that bypassed public floors, rising with stomach-dropping speed toward the 79th floor. Maya's heart pounded, adrenaline sharpening every sense. She had been in Hartwell's world for less than 72 hours, and already she was walking into a confrontation with someone who had tried to breach the most secure room in the building. The elevator doors opened onto a darkened corridor. Emergency lighting cast everything in dim red, creating shadows that seemed to move with malevolent intent. Hartwell moved forward with the confidence of a man on his own territory, but Maya noticed the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands stayed near his phone. The security officer with the scar, who had introduced himself as Agent Morrison, led them down the hallway with weapon drawn. The executive conference wing was a maze of glass-walled rooms and open collaboration spaces designed for transparency and innovation. Now it felt like a trap. They reached the blind spot, a section where a camera had malfunctioned weeks ago and hadn't been repaired. Maya made a mental note that this was the kind of detail a skilled infiltrator would notice and exploit. Morrison signaled for them to stop, then spoke into his radio. Target should be in conference room 7. We're moving in. Hartwell placed a hand on Maya's shoulder, a gesture that was both protective and restraining. Stay behind Morrison. This person may be armed. But as Morrison approached the conference room door, Maya noticed something that made her freeze. The carpet near the doorway showed faint scuff marks, the kind made by someone moving quickly, but the marks led away from the room, not into it. Wait, she said urgently, they're not in there. Morrison paused, his training making him trust her instinct even though she was a civilian. Where? Maya pointed to the scuff marks, then to a service door 20 feet down the corridor marked maintenance access. If I wanted to hide in a blind spot and then escape while everyone was focused on the obvious location, I'd use a service corridor. Hartwell's jaw tightened. Morrison, check the maintenance access. The agent moved to the door and tried the handle. It was unlocked when it should have been secured. He pushed it open to reveal a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. Fresh footprints in the dust on the floor confirmed Maya's theory. Someone had gone down recently. Morrison called for backup, and within seconds, 3 more security officers arrived. They descended the stairwell in formation, Morrison taking point, Maya and Hartwell in the middle, 2 officers bringing up the rear. The stairwell was cold and echoed with every footstep despite their attempts at stealth. It bypassed the main floors, connecting to the building's mechanical system, a labyrinth of pipes, electrical panels, and HVAC equipment that kept the tower functioning. They emerged onto a maintenance level, a vast space of concrete and machinery humming with industrial noise. The lighting was harsh and fluorescent, creating stark shadows. Maya's eyes adjusted quickly, scanning for movement. There, Morrison said quietly, pointing to a figure moving between massive air conditioning units 50 yards away. The person was dressed in dark clothing, a baseball cap pulled low, moving with purpose toward what appeared to be a service exit. Federal Agent Morrison called out, his weapon trained on the figure. Stop and identify yourself. The figure froze, then slowly turned around. As they stepped into the light, Maya felt shock ripple through her. It was a woman, perhaps in her early 40s, with dark hair and sharp features. But what made Maya's breath catch was the badge hanging around her neck. A Hartwell Industries security badge with the woman's photo and name clearly visible. Jennifer Cade, Senior Security Analyst. She had been one of the 12 people with access to the operations center. Hartwell's voice was ice. Jennifer, what are you doing down here? Jennifer's hands came up slowly, showing she was unarmed. Her expression was anguished, torn between fear and something that looked like shame. I'm sorry, Mr. Hartwell. I didn't have a choice. They have my daughter. The words hung in the air, transforming the situation instantly from simple betrayal to something far more complex. Maya saw the way Jennifer's hands trembled, the dark circles under her eyes, the posture of someone who hadn't slept in days. This wasn't a willing traitor. This was a mother being coerced. Who has your daughter? Maya asked, her voice gentle despite the tension. When did this happen? 3 days ago, Jennifer said, tears beginning to stream down her face. She was walking home from school. They took her right off the street. They sent me a video of her tied to a chair, crying, begging me to do what they said. They told me if I went to the police or told anyone at Hartwell, they would kill her. They said all I had to do was get them access to the operations center and they would let her go. Hartwell's expression shifted from fury to something more controlled. What did you give them? I cloned Victoria's palm print from the biometric scanner in the elevator, Jennifer admitted. I was supposed to leave a data drive with all the security protocols in conference room 7, but when the lockdown happened, I knew I had failed. I was trying to get out to get to my daughter before they hurt her. Victoria's voice came through Hartwell's phone, which he had on speaker. Alex, I'm pulling up Jennifer's personnel file. Her daughter is Emma Cade, 15 years old. I'm checking police reports now. There's nothing. No missing person report, no Amber Alert. Maya's mind raced. If they took the daughter 3 days ago, that was Wednesday morning, hours before the phone scam attempt. The timing suggested these events were connected, part of a larger coordinated plan. Jennifer, Maya said, stepping forward, I need you to tell us everything. What did they look like? How did they contact you? What exactly did they say? Jennifer wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. I never saw them. Everything was through phone calls from blocked numbers. The video of Emma was sent to a burner phone they left in my car. They knew everything about me, about my schedule, about the security protocols. They knew I had access to the operations center. They said if I helped them, Emma would be home by tonight. The pieces were coming together in Maya's mind, but the picture they formed was darker than she had imagined. Someone had orchestrated multiple simultaneous attacks, the phone scam, the engineer recruitment, and Jennifer's coercion, timing them to overwhelm Hartwell's ability to respond. It was a coordinated assault designed to create chaos and exploit the resulting confusion. Hartwell made a decision with the speed Maya was beginning to recognize as characteristic. Morrison, take Jennifer to a secure room. Victoria, get our best people working on finding Emma Cade. I want every camera in the city checked, every contact Jennifer has had in the past week traced. And I want it done 5 minutes ago. He turned to Jennifer and his voice softened fractionally. I will find your daughter, but you need to tell us everything, every detail, no matter how small. Whoever has her wants to use this situation to destroy us both. As Jennifer was led away, Maya stood next to Hartwell in the maintenance level, surrounded by the mechanical heartbeat of his empire. The chase had revealed more than just an intruder. It had revealed the true nature of their enemy, someone willing to kidnap a teenager and threaten her life to gain corporate access. This wasn't just about money or competition. This was something darker, something personal. Hartwell looked at Maya, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear for himself, but fear of what they were up against. They knew Jennifer's schedule down to the minute, he said quietly. They knew when I would be out of the building. They knew about the camera blind spot. Maya, we have more than an external threat. We have someone inside feeding them information. Someone with access to details that even most of my employees don't have. Maya felt the weight of that truth. Somewhere in Hartwell Industries, trusted and protected, was a traitor who had helped orchestrate the kidnapping of a 15-year-old girl. And that traitor was still out there, watching, waiting, preparing the next move. The hunt had just become infinitely more dangerous because the enemy wasn't just outside the walls anymore. The enemy was already inside. The operations center had transformed into a war room. Multiple screens displayed surveillance footage, data streams, and maps of the city marked with potential locations where Emma Cade might be held. Victoria coordinated 3 teams simultaneously, her voice calm and efficient despite the urgency. Hartwell stood at the center of the room, his eyes moving between displays with the focused intensity of a general surveying a battlefield. Maya had positioned herself at a workstation reviewing Jennifer's communications, looking for patterns that might reveal the identity of the kidnappers. It was nearly midnight, and exhaustion pulled at the edges of Maya's consciousness, but adrenaline kept her sharp. She had called Tyler earlier to explain in vague terms that she couldn't talk tonight, that her new job was demanding immediate attention. He had been confused, but accepting, telling her to be safe in a way that made her heart ache with the normalcy of sibling concern while she sat in the middle of a corporate espionage nightmare. Victoria approached with a tablet showing financial records. I've traced Jennifer's phone records for the past month. Nothing unusual until Wednesday morning when she received the first call from a blocked number. And that call lasted exactly 90 seconds. 30 minutes later, a burner phone was purchased with cash at a convenience store 3 blocks from her apartment. The store's security footage shows a man in a hoodie keeping his face turned away from cameras. He knew where they were. Hartwell pulled up the footage on the main screen, and the figure was average height, moved with practiced efficiency, and never once looked directly at a camera. Professional, Maya observed. Someone with surveillance training or law enforcement background. The kind of person who knows how to move through a city without leaving traces. She leaned forward, studying the man's gait and posture. There's something familiar about the way he moves. It's deliberate. Economical. Military maybe, or private security. Morrison, the scarred security officer, spoke from across the room. I can have that footage sent to a gate analysis specialist. If this person has ever been in military or federal service, we might get a match from the databases. Do it, Hartwell ordered. What else do we have? Victoria swiped to another file. Jennifer's daughter Emma was last seen on school security cameras at 3:15 Wednesday afternoon, leaving through the main entrance. She usually walks home a route that takes her through Lincoln Park. City cameras pick her up entering the park at 3:22, but she never exits on the other side. There's a 15-minute gap where she vanishes. Maya stood and walked to the large map of the city displayed on the wall. She traced the route with her finger, marking the park boundaries. Lincoln Park has multiple exits and a lot of wooded areas. If someone was watching her routine, they could have predicted her path and intercepted her at a dozen different points. Did Jennifer report anything unusual in the days before? Calls, strange cars, anything? Victoria checked her notes. Jennifer mentioned to a colleague on Tuesday that she thought someone had been in her apartment. Small things were moved, nothing taken, but she felt something was off. She dismissed it as paranoia. They were staging reconnaissance, Maya said, the picture becoming clearer. They entered her space to plant the burner phone and probably bugs or cameras. They wanted to be able to monitor her reaction when they took Emma, to ensure she was compliant. Hartwell's phone buzzed and he answered immediately. His expression darkened as he listened. When he hung up, he looked at Victoria. The FBI is getting involved. The kidnapping of a minor crosses into federal jurisdiction. They'll have resources we don't, but they'll also want to take over the investigation. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. If the FBI raids in with their standard protocols, whoever has Emma will know immediately. These people have been 3 steps ahead of us the entire time. They'll have contingencies. We need to find her before federal intervention forces their hand. Maya turned back to the surveillance footage, running through the timeline again. Something was bothering her, a detail that didn't fit the pattern. She rewound to the image of the man buying the burner phone. He purchased the phone at 8:30 Wednesday morning, 30 minutes after calling Jennifer. But how did he know to buy it before she even agreed to help? Unless he was certain she would cooperate, or unless the call itself wasn't the first contact. Jennifer, Maya said suddenly. I need to talk to Jennifer again. 5 minutes later, Maya sat across from Jennifer Cade in a secure conference room. The woman looked hollowed out, her face pale and drawn. An untouched cup of coffee sat in front of her. Maya kept her voice gentle but direct. Jennifer, when they first called you Wednesday morning, did they say anything that made you think they already knew you would cooperate? That they weren't asking but telling? Jennifer's eyes filled with tears again. The man on the phone, he said, we know you'll make the right choice, Jennifer. We know because you're a good mother. And then he described my apartment down to the photograph of Emma on my bedside table. He said he had been in my home while I slept. He said he could have hurt me any time, but chose not to because he needed me functional. Maya felt cold fury rising in her chest. They had violated this woman's home, invaded her most private space, all to ensure her compliance. Did he say anything else? Any detail about who he was working for or why they wanted access to the operations center? Jennifer closed her eyes, clearly trying to remember through the fog of fear and trauma. He said something strange at the end of the call. He said, this isn't personal, Jennifer. Your employer made choices that have consequences, and sometimes innocent people get caught in the machinery. It sounded like he was almost apologetic, like he regretted what he was doing but felt it was necessary. Maya felt a spark of recognition. That phrasing, choices that have consequences, machinery catching innocence. It suggested someone who viewed this as justice or retribution rather than simple crime. Someone with a grievance against Hartwell Industries who believed they had been wrong. Did he have any accent or distinctive speech pattern? A slight British accent, Jennifer said. Well-educated, professional, but there was something underneath it, something harder. Like the accent was real but softened deliberately to seem more civilized than he actually was. Maya stood and paced the small room. A British accent, professional manner, military-style operational security, and a belief that Hartwell had wronged them. She pulled out her phone and called Victoria. I need you to pull records of any former Hartwell Industries employees who were terminated, resigned under pressure, or left on bad terms in the past 5 years. Specifically, anyone with British connections or military background. Victoria's response came quickly. That's a list of about 40 people. Hartwell Industries is global, and turnover at executive levels can be contentious. Can you narrow it? Anyone who left around the time of a major company decision or policy change, Maya said, her instincts guiding her. Someone who might feel personally betrayed rather than just professionally disappointed. There was a pause as Victoria searched. Got something. Marcus Vance, your disappeared head of operations, had a deputy named Simon Cross, British national, former MI6, worked for Hartwell for 8 years. He was forced to resign 18 months ago after a major disagreement about the company's shift toward defense contract. He believed Hartwell was compromising its ethics for profit. Left on extremely bad terms, threatened legal action, then went silent. Maya felt the pieces clicking into place. Where is Simon Cross now? Unknown, Victoria said. He dropped off the grid after leaving the company. No employment records, no credit card activity, no digital footprint. Either he's using a false identity or he's very deliberately staying invisible. But there's more. Simon Cross had a daughter. She died 3 years ago in a car accident caused by faulty autonomous vehicle software. Software developed by one of Hartwell Industries' competitors. Hartwell's voice came over the phone's speaker. I remember Simon. He was brilliant, passionate about corporate responsibility. After his daughter died, he became obsessed with oversight and accountability in tech. When we signed the defense contracts, he saw it as a betrayal of everything he thought we stood for. He accused me of choosing profit over principle. Maya understood now. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was personal revenge from someone who had lost everything and blamed the industry that Hartwell represented. Simon Cross had been shaped by tragedy into someone willing to hurt others to make his point. Simon is behind this, Maya said. Then Emma Kate isn't just a hostage. She's a message. He's showing you what it feels like to have someone innocent caught in machinery you set in motion. He's forcing you to choose between your company's security and a child's life. The silence on the other end of the line was heavy with the weight of that realization. Then Hartwell's voice came back, hard and determined. Then we find him and we find Emma before he can make me choose. Maya, Victoria, meet me back in the operations center. We're gonna tear apart Simon Cross's life until we find where he's hiding. Maya returned to the operations center to find the entire space reorganized around a single objective. Multiple analysts were combing through Simon Cross's history, his known associates, his financial records from before he disappeared, and any property he might have access to. Morrison had brought in a team of former intelligence officers who specialized in finding people who didn't want to be found. The main screen now displayed a photograph of Simon Cross, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with steel gray hair and piercing blue eyes. He looked like someone who belonged in a boardroom or a university lecture hall, not someone who would orchestrate kidnappings and corporate espionage. Appearances, Maya had learned in just a few days, were the most dangerous kind of deception. Hartwell stood before the image, studying the face of his former deputy with an expression that mixed regret and resolve. Simon was one of the best people I ever hired. He challenged me, pushed me to consider the ethical implications of every decision. When he left, the company lost something vital, a conscience. I didn't realize how much I had relied on his perspective until he was gone. Victoria pulled up a new file. Simon owned a cabin in the Cascade Mountains under his mother's maiden name. The property was purchased 12 years ago, long before he left the company. It's remote, off-grid, and large enough to hold someone without neighbors noticing. Maya looked at the satellite images of the property. The cabin was surrounded by dense forests, accessible only by a single rough road. It was exactly the kind of place someone with training would choose for a covert operation. How far? 2 hours by car, Morrison said. We can have a team there in 90 minutes with a helicopter. But if Simon is as good as his file suggests, he'll have early warning systems. We go in loud, and he'll know we're coming. Maya thought about Jennifer's description of Simon's voice, the apologetic tone, the suggestion that he regretted the necessity of his actions. He doesn't want to hurt Emma. He wants Hartwell to feel the weight of consequences, but he's not a murderer. If we can open a line of communication, appeal to the part of him that's doing this out of grief rather than malice, we might be able to negotiate. Hartwell looked at her sharply. You want to talk to him? I want to try, Maya said, before we send in a tactical team and risk Emma's life in a standoff. Give me a chance to reach him, human to human, parent to parent. Simon lost his daughter to the industry's failures. Let me remind him that taking another daughter won't bring us back. It will only create more grief in the world. The room fell silent as everyone considered the risk. Then Hartwell nodded slowly. We prepare both options. Morrison, get your team ready to move on the cabin. But first, we try Maya's approach. Victoria, see if you can establish contact with Simon. Use every communication method we have. If he's monitoring us, and I suspect he is, he'll know we found him. Let's see if he's willing to talk before this becomes a tactical situation. As the team mobilized, Maya felt the immense weight of what she had just proposed. She was going to try to negotiate with a grieving father who had turned his pain into a weapon to convince him that revenge wouldn't heal us. She thought about her own brother, about how far she would go to protect him, and she understood something fundamental about Simon Cross. He wasn't evil, he was broken, and broken people, if approached with genuine understanding, could sometimes be reached before they shattered completely. Hartwell came to stand beside her, his presence solid and grounding. Thank you, he said quietly, for seeing him as human instead of just enemy. I forgot that people don't become villains in their own stories. They become heroes fighting against what they perceive as injustice. Maya looked up at him and saw the vulnerability beneath the billionaire's armor. Whatever happens tonight, we get Emma home safe. That's the only acceptable outcome. Hartwell held her gaze, and in that moment, an unspoken alliance formed between them that went beyond employment or professional obligation. They were partners now, bound by a shared commitment to protect the innocent from becoming collateral damage in a war neither had chosen. But both would fight to win. Victoria worked her technical magic, tracing digital breadcrumbs that Simon Cross had left deliberately scattered across encrypted channels. Within 20 minutes, she had established a secure video connection routed through multiple servers designed to mask location. The main screen in the operations center flickered, and then Simon Cross's face appeared, exactly matching his personnel photograph but aged by grief and purpose. He sat in what appeared to be a rustic cabin interior, wooden walls visible behind him, a single lamp providing warm light. His expression was calm, almost serene, as if he had been expecting this call. "Alexander," he said, his British accent refined and controlled. "I wondered how long it would take you to find me. Faster than I anticipated, I must admit. And you've brought quite the audience." His eyes moved across the screen, taking in the assembled team in the operations center. Then his gaze settled on Maya, and something flickered in his expression. Curiosity, perhaps. "And who might you be? The young woman who has caused me such unexpected complications this week." Maya stepped forward, positioning herself in front of the camera. "My name is Maya Chun. I'm the person who answered Miss Hartwell's phone Wednesday night and stopped your attempt to install ransomware." Simon's eyebrows rose slightly. The waitress." Yes, I heard about that. You have excellent instincts, Miss Chun. That operation took months to plan, and you dismantled it in 3 minutes with nothing but common sense and skepticism. Impressive." He paused, then added, "I hope Alexander is compensating you appropriately for saving his empire." The casual tone, the almost friendly acknowledgement of her role, threw Maya off balance for a moment. She had expected hostility or cold professionalism, not this strange mixture of respect and dark humor. "Simon," Maya said, keeping her voice steady, "you have a 15-year-old girl who has nothing to do with any of this. Whatever grievance you have with Hartwell Industries, Emma Kate is innocent. Her mother was coerced under threat. This isn't justice. It's just creating more victims." Simon's expression hardened, the genial mask slipping to reveal something raw underneath. "Don't lecture me about victims, Miss Chun. I know exactly what a victim. I held my daughter in my arms as she died because autonomous vehicle software failed. Software that was rushed to market by companies prioritizing profits over safety. Companies like the ones Alexander does business with, enables and legitimizes through his partnerships." Hartwell moved to stand beside Maya, his jaw tight. "Simon, I'm sorry about Sarah. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. What happened to your daughter was a tragedy, but I didn't write that software. I didn't make those decisions. You're punishing me for the sins of an entire industry, and you're wrong," Simon shot back, his composure cracking. "You enabled those sins. Your quantum encryption technology is being sold to defense contractors who use it for surveillance drones. Your AI algorithms are being licensed to companies that prioritize speed over safety. You've turned Hartwell Industries from a company that innovated responsibly into just another profit machine that doesn't care about consequences. I tried to stop you from inside. I begged you to reconsider the defense contracts, and you dismissed me like I was a naive idealist who didn't understand business realities." Maya saw the pain beneath Simon's anger, the desperate need to be heard, to have his grief acknowledged as more than just an inconvenient emotion. She understood something that Hartwell, for all his intelligence, might not fully grasp. Simon didn't want revenge as much as he wanted validation that his daughter's death mattered, that it should have changed something fundamental about how these companies operated. "You're right," Maya said, and the unexpected agreement made both Simon and Hartwell turn to look at her. "You're right that the industry is broken. You're right that profit motives override safety concerns. You're right that Sarah's death should have been a catalyst for change. But taking Emma won't fix any of that. It will just prove to everyone watching that you're the villain, not the whistleblower. It will let Hartwell Industries and every other company dismiss your legitimate criticisms because you chose violence over truth." Simon was silent for a long moment, studying Maya through the screen. "For someone who was serving coffee 4 days ago, you have remarkable insight into human motivation. Tell me, Miss Chun, what would you do if someone you loved was destroyed by negligence and greed? What would you do if you had tried every legal avenue and found them all blocked by money and lawyers?" Maya thought about her mother, about medical bills she couldn't afford, about a healthcare system that valued profit over lives. "I'd be furious," she said honestly. "I'd want to burn it all down, but I'd also know that the moment I hurt someone innocent, I'd become part of the problem instead of part of the solution. Your daughter's legacy should be changed, Simon. Real lasting change in how the industry operates. But that legacy dies if you're remembered as a kidnapper instead of a father who lost everything and tried to make the world safer." The silence stretched out, heavy with tension. Then Simon leaned back in his chair and Maya saw exhaustion in his features. The weariness of a man who had been running on rage and grief for so long that he had forgotten what peace felt like. "Emma is safe," he said finally. "She's unharmed and sleeping in the next room. I never intended to hurt her. I needed leverage, a way to force Alexander to understand what it feels like to have someone precious held hostage by forces beyond your control. Jennifer's compliance was necessary for my plan, but the child was always going to be released unharmed. This was about making a point, not about becoming a murderer." Hartwell's relief was palpable, but he kept his voice controlled. "Then release her now. End this, Simon. We can talk about your grievances, about reforming company policies, about creating oversight mechanisms, but not like this. Not with a child as your bargaining chip." Simon shook his head slowly. "I will release Emma, but not until I have guarantees. Not until you agree publicly to audit every defense contract, to establish an independent ethics board with real power to shut down projects, and to create a foundation in Sarah's name dedicated to tech safety oversight. And I want immunity for my actions. Recognition that I was forced to these extremes because no one would listen to the truth." Maya saw the desperation in Simon's demands. the need for his suffering to mean something concrete, but she also saw the trap he had built for himself. He had crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, and even if his motivations were understandable, his methods had made him a criminal. Hartwell seemed to be calculating the political and legal implication, but Maya stepped forward again. Simon, I can't promise you immunity. That's not in my power or MR Hartwell's. But I can promise you that your story will be heard. That Sarah's story will be heard. Help us understand what happened. Give us the documentation of the software failures, the corporate decisions that led to cutting corners. Let us build a case that exposes the systemic problems you're fighting against, but do it as a witness, not as a kidnapper. Do it in a way that honors Sarah's memory instead of tarnishing it. Simon's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She was 12 years old, brilliant, kind, loved science fiction, and wanted to be an engineer. She trusted that the car's systems would keep her safe. That's what the marketing promised, what the company assured regulators. And the software failed because some executive decided that pushing the release date forward 3 months was more important than another round of safety testing. The raw grief in his voice was a window into years of unbearable pain. Maya felt tears prick her own eyes, thinking about how fragile safety really was. How many invisible decisions by faceless executives shaped whether people lived or died. I'm sorry, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. I'm sorry that happened to Sarah. I'm sorry the system failed her and failed you. And I'm sorry that fighting that system pushed you to this point. But Emma Kay deserves to go home to her mother tonight. And you deserve to tell Sarah's story in a way that might actually change things. Simon closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Maya saw a man who had been holding himself together through sheer force of will, finally allowing himself to break. The tactical team is already on the way to my location, isn't it? He asked, his voice flat. Hartwell hesitated, then nodded. They're 15 minutes out, positioned in case negotiation fails. But I've ordered them to hold unless you force their hand. Simon, this can still end without more tragedy. Simon stood up and the camera angle shifted as he moved. He walked to a door and opened it, revealing a small bedroom where a teenage girl lay sleeping on a bed, clearly unharmed. Emma Kate had brown hair and her mother's features, peaceful in unconsciousness. She's been sedated, Simon explained, his voice clinical. Nothing dangerous, just enough to keep her calm. She'll wake up with no memory of where she's been or who took her. I made sure she was never frightened, never aware of the real danger. That was important to me. He closed the door gently and returned to face the camera. I'll surrender to your tactical team when they arrive. Emma will be handed over unharmed, but I want my statement on record first. Everything about Sarah's death. About the software failures, about the executive emails I managed to obtain showing they knew about the risks and launched anyway. I want it documented before I'm silenced by lawyers and plea deals. Victoria was already typing. We're recording everything, Simon. Your statement will be preserved and shared with the appropriate authorities and media outlets. You have my word. Hartwell stepped closer to the screen. Simon, for what it's worth, I should have listened to you 18 months ago. You were right about the defense contracts compromising our ethics. I let the board and the shareholders dictate decisions that should have been guided by principle. I can't undo those choices, but I can commit to doing better going forward. Simon's laugh was bitter, but not entirely without warmth. That's the Alexander I, remember, the one who occasionally let his conscience override his profit projections. Maybe there's hope for you yet. He paused, his expression soft. Take care of Emma and Jennifer. Make sure they get the counseling they'll need. And Miss Chun, he looked directly at Maya. You have good instincts about people. Don't let this world make you cynical. The industry needs people who still believe change is possible. The screen went dark as Simon terminated the connection. For a moment, the operations center was absolutely silent, everyone processing what had just happened. Then Hartwell was on his phone, coordinating with Morrison's tactical team, ensuring Emma's safe recovery. Victoria was organizing trauma counselors and legal support for Jennifer and Emma, and Maya stood in the center of the controlled chaos, feeling the weight of what had been prevented. A life saved, a tragedy averted, not through force but through the simple act of seeing someone's humanity. Hartwell returned to her side, and without thinking, Maya found herself leaning against him, the exhaustion of the past 4 days catching up to her all at once. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You did that, he said quietly. You saw past the surface to what he really needed. To be heard. I would have sent in the tactical team immediately and risked Emma's life because I was thinking about the threat instead of the person. Maya shook her head. You gave me the chance to try. Most people in your position would have defaulted to force. She looked up at him. Why did you trust me? I've been in your world for less than a week. Hartwell's gray eyes held hers. Because you answered the phone. Because when you had every reason to ignore a problem that wasn't yours, you engaged with it. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Then Morrison's voice came over the radio. We have visual confirmation. Emma Cade is secure and unharmed. Simon Cross is in custody and cooperating fully. The operations center erupted in relieved celebration, but Maya barely heard it. She was thinking about a 12-year-old girl named Sarah who never got to become an engineer, about a father whose grief had nearly destroyed him, and about a 15-year-old named Emma who would wake up tomorrow with no memory of her ordeal, but whose safe return represented something more than just a successful negotiation. It represented the possibility that even in a world driven by profit and power, human compassion could still make a difference. That sometimes the most revolutionary act was simply refusing to look away. Dawn broke over the city in shades of pink and gold, painting the Hartwell Tower in light that made it look almost benevolent. Maya stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the operations center, a cup of coffee growing cold in her hands, watching the city wake up. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, running on adrenaline and determination that was finally beginning to fade. Behind her, the team was wrapping up the night's crisis, documenting everything for the inevitable legal proceeding. Emma Cade had been reunited with her mother in an emotional scene that left hardened security professionals wiping their eyes. Simon Cross had been transferred to federal custody after providing hours of testimony about corporate malfeasance that would likely trigger multiple investigations. It should have felt like victory, but Maya's instincts were screaming that something was still wrong. Victoria approached with a fresh cup of coffee, pressing it into Maya's hands and removing the cold one. "You should go home, sleep for at least 12 hours. You've done more in 4 days than most people do in 4 years. Maya accepted the coffee gratefully. "In a minute. Something's bothering me about all of this." Victoria leaned against the window beside her. "What specifically?" "Everything," Maya said, organizing her thoughts. Simon's operation was personal revenge motivated by greed. The phone scam was sophisticated corporate espionage using AI and perfect intelligence about the Singapore merger. The engineer recruitment was long-term social engineering. These are 3 completely different methodologies, different skill sets, different motivations. Simon admitted to the engineer recruitment using the Meridian Solutions front to steal code that would embarrass Hartwell publicly. But he denied any involvement in the phone scam. Victoria frowned. "You think he was telling the truth?" Maya nodded. "He had no reason to lie at that point. He was confessing to kidnapping. Why hold back about a failed phone scam? Which means we still have an active threat. Someone who knew about Singapore, someone with resources for AI voice synthesis, someone who is still out there planning their next move." Hartwell joined them at the window, looking as exhausted as Maya felt, but carrying it with the practiced endurance of someone used to working past human limits. "I've been thinking the same thing." Simon's operation was contained and personal. The phone scam was professional and strategic. "We caught Simon, but we haven't caught the real end." He pulled up a tablet displaying the data Victoria had compiled. "The Singapore merger vote happens in 48 hours. If someone wants to sabotage it, they're running out of time. They'll have to make a move soon, and it will be bold." Maya studied the merger details. $30 billion, a partnership with a Singaporean tech conglomerate that would expand Hartwell Industries' Asian markets. The deal had been negotiated in absolute secrecy, with only 7 people knowing the full terms. "So who are the 7, she asked. Hartwell ticked them off on his fingers. "Myself, Victoria, our CFO Richard Sterling, our chief legal counsel Patricia Moss, 2 board members Thomas Chun and Margaret Reynolds, and Marcus Vance before he disappeared. All of them have been with the company for years. All vetted extensively." Maya felt the answer hovering just out of reach, a pattern she could almost see but not quite grasp. Then Victoria's tablet chimed with an alert, and her expression went from tired to alarmed in an instant. "We have a problem. A major problem. Richard Sterling just initiated a wire transfer of $500 million to an overseas account. The transaction is flagged as suspicious by our fraud detection systems, but it has his authorization codes and biometric signature." Hartwell's face went pale. "Richard has been my CFO for 12 years. He's one of my most trusted advisors. If he's compromised, if he's been turned or coerced, then whoever is behind this has access to everything. Not just information, but our actual finance." Maya's mind raced. "Where's Richard now?" Victoria checked the building security systems. "His badge shows him entering the building 20 minutes ago. He's currently in his office on the 75th floor. Alone." The pieces clicked together with terrifying clarity. This is it. This is the move. They're not trying to steal information anymore. They're trying to drain company assets right before the merger vote. If $500 million disappears, the merger partners will see it as financial instability. The deal collapses, the stock price crashes, and Hartwell Industries becomes vulnerable to acquisition. Hartwell was already moving toward the elevator, his exhaustion replaced by cold fury. "Morrison, I need your team mobilized now. We're going to the 75th floor. Victoria, freeze all financial transactions over $1 million. I don't care if it disrupts operations. Nothing moves until we secure Richard." Maya followed, her instincts screaming danger. If Richard is acting under coercion like Jennifer was, we need to approach this carefully. But if he's a willing participant, if he's the insider we've been looking for, then he's already planned his exit strategy. The elevator descended with the same stomach-dropping speed Maya was beginning to associate with crisis. Morrison and 2 other security officers joined them. all armed and moving with tactical precision. The 75th floor housed the executive financial office, a realm of polished wood and expensive art where billions of dollars moved through keyboards and authorization code. They approached Richard Sterling's corner office, the door closed but light visible through the frosted glass. Hartwell placed his hand on the biometric lock, and the door clicked open. Richard Sterling sat behind his desk, a man in his late 50s with silver hair and the kind of timeless elegance that came from old money and Ivy League educations. He looked up as they entered, and his expression showed no surprise, no fear, only a weary resignation. "Alexander," he said calmly, "I was wondering when you would figure it out. I expected it would take longer, but your new security chief is remarkably perceptive." He nodded toward Maya with something that might have been respect. "The transaction hasn't completed yet," Hartwell said, his voice tight with betrayal. "Cancel it now, and we can talk about why you're doing this, what pressure they're putting on you. We can protect you like we protected Jennifer." Richard's laugh was soft and bitter. "I'm not being coerced, Alexander. I'm being paid, quite handsomely in fact. The $500 million I just transferred is nothing compared to what I've been promised when Hartwell Industries is acquired by Nexus Corporation. 20% of the acquisition price as a consultant fee for facilitating the takeover. That's approximately $6 billion, enough to retire to any country without extradition treaties and live like a king for the rest of my life." The casual admission of treason hit like a physical blow. Maya saw Hartwell's face cycle through shock, fury, and finally cold calculation. "You've been feeding them information for how long?" Richard leaned back in his chair, seemingly at ease despite being surrounded. 18 months. Since right around the time Simon Cross left the company, actually. That's when Nexus approached me with an interesting proposition. They wanted to acquire Hartwell Industries, but they knew you would never sell willingly. So they needed to create conditions that would force a sale, a systematic campaign to undermine confidence, sabotage key deals, and ultimately crash the stock price low enough that they could launch a hostile takeover. Maya felt sick as the full scope of the conspiracy became clear. The phone scam was you. You gave them the Singapore merger details, Victoria's voice patterns for the AI synthesis, the timing of when Alexander would be vulnerable. Richard nodded. "I also arranged for the engineers to be recruited, though Simon hijacked that operation for his own purposes, which was an unfortunate complication. I fed them the building security information, the camera blind spots, Jennifer's schedule. Every attack over the past 6 months was orchestrated with my assistant. And before you ask, yes, I know you can't prove most of it. I've been very careful to leave no direct evidence linking me to Nexus. The wire transfer you just caught was meant to be my final act, a piece of sabotage that would tip the scales and force the merger to collapse." Hartwell's hands clenched into fists. "We trusted you. I trusted you. You've been at my side for 12 years. We built this company together. Why, Richard? For money you don't even need. You're already wealthy beyond most people's dreams." Richard's expression hardened. "Because I'm tired of being the number two, Alex. Tired of watching you get all the credit, all the recognition, while I do the actual work of keeping this company financially sound. Tired of being the executor of your vision instead of building my own empire. Nexus offered me not just money, but power. A chance to run their North American operations, to finally be the one making decisions instead of implementing someone else's. The motive was so mundane, so human in its pettiness, that Maya felt a wave of disgust. All of this, the attacks, the kidnapping, the threats, because Richard Sterling's ego couldn't handle being second in command. Morrison moved forward to detain him, but Richard held up a hand. "Before you arrest me, you should know that the wire transfer is just a distraction. While you've been focused on that, my real exit strategy has been executed." He glanced at his computer screen with a satisfied smile. Approximately 3 minutes ago, a data package containing every confidential file in Hartwell Industries servers, every secret algorithm, every proprietary design, every private communication, was uploaded to a distributed network and set to release publicly in 6 hours, unless I send a cancellation code. The stock price won't just crash, Alexander. Your company will be destroyed by the complete loss of competitive advantage and the legal nightmares of exposed confidential information. Victoria was already on her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. He's not bluffing. I'm seeing the data package. It's huge, and it's distributed across multiple servers in different countries. We can't shut it down in time. We need the cancellation code. Hartwell leaned forward, his hands flat on Richard's desk. "What do you want?" Richard smiled. "I want immunity. Full pardon for everything I've done, and I want you to step down as CEO, announcing that health concerns are forcing your retirement. Do that, and I send the cancellation code. Refuse, and I destroy everything you've built." Maya watched the play of emotions across Hartwell's face. This was checkmate. A perfectly executed corporate assassination. Richard had spent 18 months building this trap, and now they were caught in it with no good options. But something about Richard's confidence bothered her. He was too calm, too certain of his victory. Maya moved closer to his desk, studying him carefully. "You've thought of everything," she said slowly. "The wire transfer as a distraction, The data packages, insurance, the distributed network to prevent us from stopping it. But there's one thing you didn't account for. Richard's smile faltered slightly. And what would that be? Maya pointed to his computer screen. You're still logged into the system. The cancellation code has to be sent from your authenticated session, which means it's tied to your physical location and your biometric markers. You can't send it remotely because the security protocols require you to be at this terminal, which means you're not holding all the cards. You're trapped here just like we are. Richard's expression shifted from confident to uncertain. Victoria saw what Maya was suggesting. If we shut down his access to the terminal, he can't send the code, but neither can anyone else. We create a stalemate. Not ideal, but it buys us time to trace and neutralize the data package manually. It's not checkmate, Maya said, looking at Richard. It's a draw. And in a draw, we all lose, which means we all have an incentive to negotiate a real solution instead of playing out this mutually assured destruction scenario. For the first time since they entered the office, Richard Sterling looked genuinely worried, realizing that his perfect trap had a flaw he hadn't anticipated. And in that moment, Maya knew they had a chance to turn this disaster into something survivable. The standoff lasted exactly 14 seconds before Richard's composure cracked completely. His hand moved toward his keyboard, trying to execute the cancellation code before they could stop him. But Morrison was faster. The security officer crossed the space in 2 strides and physically pulled Richard away from the desk, the CFO's chair rolling backward with enough force to hit the wall. Victoria immediately accessed the terminal remotely, locking it down so that no commands could be executed without her authorization. Richard struggled against Morrison's grip, his carefully cultivated elegance dissolving into desperation. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. "In 5 hours and 53 minutes, every secret Hartwell Industries has will be public knowledge. Every competitor will have your algorithms, every journalist will have your confidential emails, every regulator will have documentation of every gray area decision you've ever made. Your company will be eviscerated, Alexander. Let me send the cancellation code or we all burn together." Hartwell's expression was granite. "No, we don't negotiate with traitors. Victoria, how long do we have to trace and neutralize the data packet?" Victoria's fingers moved rapidly across her tablet, pulling up network architecture diagrams and security protocols. The package is distributed across 17 servers in 12 countries. It's using a dead man switch protocol, meaning if it doesn't receive a cancellation signal every hour, it auto-releases. We have approximately 5 hours and 50 minutes before the next check-in window closes. If I had our entire cybersecurity team working on this, we might be able to neutralize enough servers to prevent full release, but it would be close. And there's another problem. Maya moved to look over Victoria's shoulder at the data stream. "What problem?" Victoria pointed to a section of code displayed on her screen. "The package isn't just set to release to public servers. It's also programmed to send copies to specific recipients. Every major media outlet, every competitor, every regulatory agency. Even if we neutralize the public release, those targeted sends will still execute unless we have the master cancellation code." Richard designed this with multiple fail-safes. Maya studied the code, looking for patterns. Her brother Tyler had taught her basic programming, and while she was far from an expert, she understood logical structures. There has to be a weakness. No system is perfect. Every trap has a flaw because every trap is built by humans, and humans make assumptions. Richard, now handcuffed to his chair with Morrison standing guard, laughed bitterly. "You're welcome to try, Miss Chun, but I've spent 18 months perfecting this. I had access to the best security experts money could buy, consultants from Nexus who specialize in exactly this kind of data warfare. The only way to stop it is the cancellation code, and the only person who can send it is me." Hartwell pulled Maya aside, his voice low and urgent. "What do you thinking?" "I'm thinking that Richard is too confident," Maya said slowly. "Keeps emphasizing that only he can send the cancellation code, that only his authenticated session can do it. But Victoria just locked down his terminal remotely, which means the system responds to administrative override." She looked at Victoria. "Can you access the cancellation protocol from your own credentials?" Victoria shook her head. "I can lock terminals and freeze transactions, but the cancellation code is tied to Richard's specific security clearance. It's a separate authorization level that even I don't have access to. Only the CFO or the CEO can execute financial security protocols at that level." Maya turned to Hartwell. "But you're the CEO, which means you should have the same level of access Richard does. Why can't you send the cancellation code?" Hartwell's expression shifted to something like chagrin. "Because I don't know the code. Richard was responsible for all financial security protocols. I trusted him to handle that domain while I focused on operations and strategy. It was one of the fundamental divisions of responsibility in our partnership. That trust just became our greatest vulnerability." Maya felt the pieces shifting in her mind. Richard's confidence wasn't just about the technical sophistication of his trap. It was about the human element, about the trust that had allowed him to build systems where he alone held critical knowledge. But trust worked both ways, and people who operated on ego often made predictable mistakes. "Richard," Maya said, turning back to the handcuffed CFO, "you said Nexus has been paying you for 18 months. That's a long time to maintain a secret relationship with a competitor. How did did you communicate with them? Encrypted channels? Dead drops? Richard's smirk returned. Nothing so dramatic. We had regular meetings disguised as industry conferences and charity events. Nexus's North American VP Marcus Thorne and I have been photographed together dozens of times at public functions. Hidden in plain sight, as they say. No one questioned why a CFO might have professional relationships with executives at other companies. Maya filed that information away and pressed on. And the payments? How were those structured? You couldn't exactly have them wiring millions to your personal accounts without triggering the same fraud detection systems you help maintain. Richard's expression grew cautious, sensing a trap, but unable to resist explaining his cleverness. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, cryptocurrency transfers, standard financial obfuscation techniques that have been around for decades. The money was never traceable back to Nexus, or to me personally, but Victoria was already pulling up financial records, her expression sharpening. Actually, Richard, you left more traces than you realize. The problem with shell corporations is that they still have to file paperwork somewhere, and cryptocurrency transfers leave blockchain records. You might have hidden the money, but you couldn't hide the patterns. She pulled up a series of transactions displayed on the main screen. Here's a cryptocurrency wallet that received funds from 3 different sources traced back to Nexus subsidiary. The wallet was accessed from IP addresses that correspond to your home network in your phone. You were careful, but not careful enough. Richard's confidence was beginning to erode, replaced by the first signs of panic. That's circumstantial at best. Good luck getting it admitted in court. Hartwell moved closer, his voice cold. I don't need it for court, Richard. I need it for leverage. You thought you were the only one who could play games with information and consequences, but you made a critical error. You assumed I would prioritize the company's secrets over everything else, that I would negotiate rather than let everything burn. You're right that I've made morally ambiguous choices, that I've prioritized profit, that I've let the company drift from its ethical foundations. Simon Cross was right about that. But you know what I won't do? I won't let a traitor dictate terms. Maya saw where Hartwell was going and felt a surge of both admiration and concern. He was calling Richard's bluff, but the stakes were catastrophically high. Alexander, Victoria said carefully, if that data releases, the damage will be irreversible. We're talking about losing $30 billion in market value, possible criminal investigations, the end of Hartwell Industries as we know it. Hartwell never took his eyes off Richard, I know. But if I cave to this, if I step down and give him immunity, then I'm telling every future enemy that all they need to do is threaten loudly enough and I'll fold. The company might survive this betrayal, but it won't survive the perception that I'm weak. Richard was sweating now, his earlier composure completely shattered. You're bluffing. You wouldn't sacrifice everything you built out of pride. I'm not bluffing, Hartwell said quietly. And it's not pride. It's principle. Something I forgot I had until a waitress answered my phone and reminded me what integrity looks like. Maya felt the weight of his words, the reference to her, to the moment that had started this entire chain of events. She looked at the timer on Victoria's screen. 5 hours and 41 minutes until potential catastrophe, and she knew they needed a different approach. They couldn't outmaneuver Richard's trap technologically. Not in the time they had, but they could outmaneuver him psychologically. Richard, Maya said, drawing his attention, you said Marcus Thorne from Nexus has been your contact, your partner in this conspiracy. Have you spoken to him since we caught you? Richard's eyes narrowed. Why would that matter? Because if you haven't, Maya continued, then he doesn't know you've been compromised, which means he's still operating under the assumption that everything is going according to plan. Victoria caught on immediately. If we can contact Marcus Thorne posing as Richard, we might be able to extract information or even get him to provide override codes. Richard's laugh was desperate. Thorne isn't an idiot. He would verify my identity through multiple channels. You can't just call him and pretend to be me. Maya pulled out her phone and called her brother, not caring that it was barely 7 in the morning. Tyler answered groggily. Maya, what's wrong? I need your help, and I need it fast. Do you still have access to that voice synthesis software from your security research project? The one that can clone voices from recordings? There was a pause as Tyler processed the urgency in her tone. Yeah, but it's experimental. It requires at least 10 minutes of clear audio to create a convincing clone. How fast can you get to Hartwell Tower? I can be there in 30 minutes if I break every speed limit. Do it. I'll have security waiting for you at the executive entrance. She hung up and looked at Victoria. Do we have recordings of Richard's voice? Board meetings, conference calls, anything with clear audio? Victoria nodded. We record everything for legal protection. I can compile hours of Richard's voice within minutes. Hartwell was watching Maya with something like wonder. You're going to impersonate Richard using AI voice synthesis and extract the cancellation code from Nexus. It's brilliant and completely insane. Maya met his gaze. You hired me for my instinct. My instinct says Richard Strap has a human vulnerability. Marcus Thorne thinks he's in control, thinks his partner is still in position. We use that confidence against him. Richard was shaking his head violently. It won't work. Thorne will ask questions only I would know the answers to, verification questions about past meetings and conversations. You can't fake 18 months of shared history. Then you're going to help us, Maya said simply. You're going to give us the answers to those verification questions. Or we're going to let your trap execute, and then we're going to make sure that everyone knows you're the one who destroyed. Hartwell Industries, Nexus won't protect you. They'll claim they had no knowledge of your actions. You'll go to prison for decades, and the billions you were promised will evaporate like smoke. Richard stared at her, calculating odds, measuring outcomes. She could see the moment he realized he had overplayed his his hand, that his perfect trap had trapped him as much intended victims. What do I get in exchange? A chance, Hartwell said. Cooperate fully, help us neutralize the threat, and I'll advocate for reduced charges. You'll still face consequences, but they won't be as severe as they would be if you force us to let the data release. And there's one more thing. Maya pulled up the blockchain records Victoria had found. We have evidence of your communications and financial ties to Nexus. If this goes public, Marcus Thorne goes down with you. But if you help us, we can potentially keep that information sealed, protecting your co-conspirator. Unless you'd rather both of you face justice, the choice is yours. Richard closed his eyes, the last of his defiance crumbling. He had built an empire of betrayal on the foundation of trust, and now that foundation was being used to dismantle everything he had constructed. When he opened his eyes again, he looked like what he truly was. A man who had gambled everything on his own cleverness and lost. Fine, he said, voice hollow. I'll give you the verification answers, but you need to understand that Thorne is more dangerous than you realize. He's not just a corporate VP. His former NSA, and he has resources that go well beyond what Nexus officially controls. If he suspects you're playing him, he won't hesitate to activate contingencies that will be worse than this. Maya felt a chill run through her. Worse than releasing all of Hartwell's secrets to the world? Richard met her gaze with something that might have been genuine fear. Much worse. The data release was always the public threat, the obvious bomb ticking in everyone's face. But Thorne has another plan, a backup that he swore he would only activate if everything else failed. I don't know the details, but I know it involves physical infrastructure, not just data. He's prepared to do real damage, Maya, not just financial damage. The revelation shifted the stakes yet again, transforming their crises from a corporate espionage problem into something potentially catastrophic. Hartwell and Victoria exchanged grim looks, understanding that they weren't just racing to save a company anymore. They were racing to prevent something far worse, an attack by an enemy who had been planning this for far longer than 18 months, who had resources beyond what they had imagined, and who was still out there, watching, waiting, and prepared to escalate beyond anything they had anticipated. The war they thought they were fighting was just beginning. Tyler Chun arrived at Hartwell Tower looking like he had rolled out of bed and directly into his car, which was exactly what had happened. His hair was disheveled, he wore mismatched socks visible beneath hastily pulled-on jeans, and he carried a laptop bag that looked like it had survived multiple apocalypses, but his eyes were sharp and focused as Maya led him into the operations center, taking in the sophisticated technology with the appreciation of someone who understood exactly what he was looking at. Maya quickly brought him up to speed on the situation while Victoria compiled audio files of Richard Sterling's voice. Tyler listened without interruption, his fingers already flying across his laptop keyboard, loading the voice synthesis software he had developed for his thesis on social engineering vulnerabilities. When Maya finished explaining, he looked at her with a mixture of pride and concern. Okay, my little sister, saving billion-dollar companies from corporate espionage. Mom would be so confused and also weirdly proud. Focus, Tyler, Maya said, but she squeezed his shoulder gratefully. Can you do this? Tyler examined the audio files Victoria had provided, running them through analysis software. I have 17 minutes of clean audio samples. The synthesis will be 94% accurate, good enough to fool most people. But if this Thorne guy is former intelligence, he might have trained ear for voice stress patterns and micro-variation. We get maybe 3 minutes of conversation before he starts questioning authenticity. 3 minutes would have to be enough. They set up in a secure conference room with Richard handcuffed to a chair, Morrison standing guard, and every word being recorded. Maya, Hartwell, Victoria, and Tyler crowded around a speaker system connected to Tyler's laptop. They had scripted the conversation based on Richard's briefing, but they all knew that the moment Thorne deviated from expected questions, the whole operation could collapse. Richard provided the private number, and Victoria initiated the call. The phone rang twice before a smooth, controlled voice answered. Richard, I wasn't expecting to hear from you until the package executed. Is there a problem? Tyler activated the voice synthesis software, and when he spoke into the modified microphone, Richard Sterling's voice emerged from the speakers with uncanny accuracy. No problem, Marcus, but we need to talk about contingencies. I have some concerns about exposure points. There was a brief pause, and Maya could almost feel Thorne's suspicion crystallizing across the line. What kind of concerns? Tyler glanced at Richard, who mouthed the appropriate response. Maya noticed his hands were shaking. The waitress, Tyler said in Richard's synthesized voice, the one who intercepted the phone operation. She's proven more perceptive than anticipated. Hartwell has elevated her to head of security, and she's asking uncomfortable questions. I want to confirm that the physical infrastructure backup is secure and untraceable. Another pause. Longer this time. Maya's heart hammered as seconds stretched like hours. Then Thorne spoke, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been admiration. The Chun woman. Yes, she's been an unexpected variable, but the backup is secure. The building's mechanical systems have been compromised for weeks. When the data release fails and Hartwell tries to claim victory, the simultaneous failure of climate control, fire suppression, and elevator systems will create enough chaos to force evacuation. In the confusion, our secondary team extracts the quantum encryption prototypes from the research labs. Insurance policy becomes acquisition opportunity. Maya's blood ran cold. Thorne wasn't just planning to embarrass or bankrupt Hartwell Industries. He was planning to sabotage critical building systems, potentially endangering thousands of people to cover a physical theft of technology. This had escalated from corporate espionage to domestic terrorism. Victoria was already pulling up building systems on her tablet, searching for signs of compromise. Tyler continued the conversation, keeping Thorne engaged. Timeline confirmation? When does the mechanical failure execute? Simultaneously with the data release, Thorne replied, 5 hours and 23 minutes from now. But Richard, you sound different. Strained. Are you certain you're secure? Tyler's eyes widened in alarm. They had maybe 10 seconds before Thorne realized he was talking to a fake. Maya made a split-second decision and grabbed Richard by the collar, yanking him toward the microphone. Richard, startled and genuinely panicked, spoke in his own voice. Thorne, it's compromised. They have me. They know about the building systems. There was absolute silence on the other end. Then Marcus Thorne laughed. A cold sound devoid of genuine humor. Well played, whoever orchestrated this. I assume Miss Chun is listening? I am, Maya said, taking over the conversation directly. And so is the FBI, the building security team, and about 12 other agencies who are very interested in your plans to sabotage mechanical systems in a building with 8,000 daily occupants. Thorne's voice remained unnaturally calm. Then you know you have approximately 5 hours to find and neutralize modifications made by experts over the course of weeks. The building systems are complex, Miss Chun. Thousands of components, hundreds of access points. Even knowing there's a problem, you'll be searching for needles in a very large, very dangerous haystack. And if you evacuate the building, you trigger a financial panic that serves our purposes almost as well as the mechanical failure. Checkmate, either way. Hartwell leaned toward the microphone, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. This is Alexander Hartwell. You're wrong about the checkmate, Thorne. You made the same mistake Richard did. You assumed I would prioritize the company over everything else, but I've learned something this week. I've been reminded that some things matter more than quarterly earnings and market dominance. He nodded to Victoria, who had been furiously coordinating on her tablet. We're evacuating the building now. All 8,000 people will be safely outside within 30 minutes. Then we're shutting down every mechanical system manually and bringing in federal engineers to sweep every component. Your sabotage will be found and neutralized. The data release will be stopped, and you will be arrested for conspiracy to commit terrorism. The only question is whether you surrender now or force us to hunt you down. The silence on Thorne's end was different this time. The silence of someone recalculating odds and realizing their perfect plan had fatal flaws. Maya pressed their advantage. Can't hide, Mr. Thorne. We have 18 months of Richard's communications, financial records, blockchain transactions linking you to shell companies. We have recordings of this conversation where you describe plans to sabotage building systems. Every intelligence agency in the country will make you their top priority. Is that really how you want to spend whatever freedom you have left? When Thorne spoke again, the calculated calm had fractured, revealing something uglier underneath. You think you've won? This was always about more than one building, one company. Nexus has been systematically positioning itself to acquire or destroy every competitor in the quantum encryption space. Hartwell Industries is just the biggest dominant. When it falls, the market contracts, venture capital dries up, and we consolidate power. You might stop this particular operation, but the strategy continues. The game is far bigger than you understand. Then we'll fight the bigger game, Maya said firmly. But this particular battle? You've lost. I suggest you use whatever time you have to consult with lawyers who specialize in federal conspiracy charges. The line went dead. For a moment, everyone in the room was silent, processing what had just happened. Then Hartwell was moving, issuing commands with rapid-fire precision. Victoria, initiate full building evacuation. Make it orderly but fast. Morrison, coordinate with federal authorities. I want bomb squads, structural engineers, and cybersecurity specialists here within the hour. Tyler, I need you to work with our IT team to isolate and neutralize the data package. Richard, you're going to tell us exactly where Thorne's people modified the building systems. Every detail, every access point, every component. And you're going to pray we find everything before someone gets hurt. The next 5 hours were controlled chaos. The building evacuation proceeded with remarkable efficiency, 8,000 people filing out through emergency exits, while Hartwell's security team and federal agents swept each floor. Tyler worked with a team of cybersecurity experts, using Richard's credentials to access the data package distribution system and systematically neutralizing servers. Federal engineers crawled through mechanical spaces, finding and removing sophisticated devices designed to override safety systems and create cascading failures. Maya coordinated between teams, her inexperience with corporate security offset by her ability to see patterns and ask the right questions. She was everywhere, checking evacuation progress, conferring with engineers, ensuring Richard provided accurate information. She caught glimpses of Hartwell doing the same, his exhaustion visible but his determination unshakable. By early afternoon, it was over. The data package had been neutralized with 47 minutes to spare. Every sabotage device had been found and removed. Marcus Thorne had been arrested trying to board a private flight to a country without extradition treaties. Nexus Corporation's involvement had been exposed, triggering multiple federal investigations. And Hartwell Tower stood intact, its occupants safe, its secrets protected. Maya found Hartwell on the observation deck as the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. He looked like a man who had been to war and survived, exhausted but whole. She stood beside him and they watched the city lights begin to flicker on, each point of light representing lives being lived, people who had no idea how close they had come to disaster. You did it, Hartwell said quietly. You saw what trained security professionals missed. You turned a nightmare into a victory. We did it, Maya corrected. You trusted my instinct. You prioritized people over profits when it mattered most. That's what made the difference. Hartwell turned to face her, his gray eyes reflecting the sunset. I meant what I said on that phone call. I've spent years building this empire, and somewhere along the way I forgot why I started. I forgot that technology should serve humanity, not the other way around. You reminded me. He paused, then continued. The board is going to demand changes after this. Investigations, restructuring, new oversight. I'm probably going to lose some control over the company I built, but I think that might be exactly what needs to happen. Maya understood what he wasn't saying, that the crisis had transformed him, cracked open the armor he had built around himself and let in light. And you, he asked, what happens now? You've had the most intense first week of employment in corporate history. If you want to walk away, I would understand. Maya thought about her tiny apartment, about her brother's college tuition, about her mother's medical bills that had driven her to exhaustion. Those problems hadn't disappeared, but they felt different now, manageable rather than insurmountable. More than that, she had discovered something about herself this week. She was good at this. At seeing through deception, at connecting with people, at solving problems that didn't have obvious solution. I'm staying, she said firmly. Someone needs to make sure you don't drift back into prioritizing profit over principle. Consider me your corporate conscience. Hartwell smiled, genuine and warm. Best hiring decision I ever made. They stood together as night fell over the city. Two people from completely different worlds who had been brought together by a phone call, a moment of instinct, and a shared belief that some things mattered more than success. Hartwell Industries would survive, changed but stronger. The threats would continue because they always did in a world driven by competition and greed. But for now, in this moment, they had won. Not just for themselves, but for everyone in the building. Everyone whose lives had been protected by a waitress who answered a phone when she could have looked away. And in the reflection of the glass, Maya Chun saw not the exhausted server who had been drowning in debt and desperation, but someone new. Someone who had found her purpose not in servitude, but in service of something larger than herself. The city stretched out before them, full of light and shadow, danger and possibility, and Maya was ready for all of it. If this story of instinct, courage, and the extraordinary power of one person choosing to act moved you, remember that each of us has moments where we can answer the call or let it ring, where we can look away or engage. Maya Chun was just a waitress when this story began, but she became something more by trusting herself and refusing to accept that ordinary people can't make extraordinary differences. The world is full of phones ringing, full of moments where your choice matters. The only question is whether you'll answer.